Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Geoff Ketchum. The man with the beautiful hair, is Michael Rochman of OrangeBloods.com. You've seen him do other transfer portal reaction videos here on the channel. That's what we're doing today. We're reacting to the Longhorns putting their toes into the water a little bit by offering Albany defensive end Jared Verse. Michael, it's funny. I have him. So I did my top 25 guys available in the portal list for orangebloods.com on Sunday night, literally 24 hours ago. Verse is a guy that I have ranked as the number 3 player on the entire list, a guy that I think Texas probably should have been in on earlier. He officially announces today that Texas gets the offer. But as soon as you saw his name when we were talking about it in Slack, you were like, oh, I like this one. Verse can play. Let's talk about Jared Verse a little bit because he is one of the hottest transfer properties in the portal right now, and he's the name of the day for the Longhorns.
Right. So the big thing for me in terms of Jared Verse is just the fact that the overall edge talent in this pool is not as high as some of the other positions. You know, there are some talented offensive linemen, some talented defensive backs, but there's a little bit of a fallback option. For Jared Verse, a lot of teams are kind of looking at it as, look, we're getting Verse and we're sticking with our guys. And I think Texas might be in that same boat. So that's where a guy like Verse comes in with already a very dynamic skill set, very nice power, very nice frame to work at the FBS level, but also a lack of talent behind him, no disrespect to the other guys, that really kind of make teams view him as a top priority in this portal.
3 years of eligibility left. Like, that's one of the things right from Jump Street when talking about Verse, it's really attractive. To give everybody a little bit of breakdown, the kid is originally from Berwick, Pennsylvania. So there's a lot of people that think if Penn State comes in, swoops in late, you know, who knows if that's a dream school or not. He goes to Albany and redshirts in 2019, COVID hits in 2020. So their season gets wiped out. So this year he's a third year redshirt freshman, and he just kills it. He's a CAA Defensive Rookie of the Year, second team All CAA, led CAA in tackles for loss with 10, second in sacks with 4, and he's just a guy that at 6'4", 250-ish pounds, incredibly productive and a good athlete. He has a lot of pieces to the puzzle. I don't know that I'm convinced that he comes in at an elite school and is an elite player right away. But I think he's a guy that has a ton of time to develop what he's already got going. He's a guy that can help. I think you could make a case that if he showed up at Texas, he's easily competing for a starting job in this sophomore year. And if you hit on him, you're talking about a guy, if you're Texas, you got 3 years left to kind of accelerate his development, and hopefully produce a guy that is one day playing at the next level beyond Texas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with the amount of attention he's gotten, a lot of teams are saying, look, you come here, you're our perceived starter day one. And yep. I think Texas is in that same boat. Gofu obviously is someone that they are glad to have back, but at the same time, they're not going to be scared to go back into that portal. And if you're talking to Verse, you're saying, look, we got a wide open spot. We think you're talented enough to fill it. We think you can fit into our defense, play both roles, you know, drop into coverage, rush the passer. And Verse showed the ability to rush the passer already. We haven't really seen that versatility in terms of scheme fit into this Texas defense. But I think overall, there's plenty to like about him. He has track in his background, was a very good runner. Great size, as you mentioned, about 6'4", 6'5", 250-ish pounds. So definitely has the size, frame, and production to make you think that he could very easily fit into an FBS defense, and Texas could use some help on the edge.
He's exactly the kind of profile of guy that I think Texas should have scouts all over. Players like this, who as young players at these levels have the body prototype. I mean, at 6'4", 250, there's no tweener about him. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of guys that you're going to find in the portal at his position, there's a little bit of a knock against them. A lot of times it's physically. Why didn't they make it at the school they were at? Perhaps they had a hard time adjusting. This is a guy that physically, he's got the height, 6'4", he's got the weight, 250-ish, I think, with room. You know, you look at his frame. I was watching a couple of YouTube interviews that he did both with our Florida State site and within the Rivals Network and with the Tennessee site. And he's a guy that I think can still stack on some more weight, some more strength, get him in a weight program that's probably more advanced, with all due respect to Albany, than what they have to work with. I just think that we're talking about a guy whose best football is still potentially in front of him. And he's been a very productive guy at the level that he's at. You have to dig in the coal mines a little bit and try to find a diamond. And you're not going to hit every time, right? You could take Jared Verse and it might not work out, but every 4-star guy that you take, the basic 4-star, has a failure rate of about 75 to 80% at best. So to find a guy who's done it at the collegiate level to some degree with the height, weight, athletic tools, I don't know that I don't think his burst is great. When I watch this little bit of sample of video that he has, but he plays with good leverage. He has some inside pass rush moves. He can get around the corner. Like, I think that he's a guy that is a better player than he'll wow at the combine at this point. But I think at the collegiate level, everything that I saw from him, if that guy was doing that remotely on the high school level, we would be like, that's a guy, that's a must get. What he was doing at Albany is a more advanced level than the Texas high school scene. And he's clearly one of the best players at that level. And again, the profile is perfect. 3 years of eligibility remaining, as opposed to the Ray Thornton profile of a guy that comes in with 1 year of eligibility left, and you're not building towards anything. You're just hoping he can show up and in 12 months figure it out enough to give you something that you can use.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's been a big thing that has been a focus for Steve Sarkisian, is going for guys that can be here, not just for a 1 year fix, but for a long-term addition. And, you know, some of these transfer portal options, they've maybe been in college 2-3 years, but they still have plenty of eligibility left. And Jared Verse is another guy that you can add to that puzzle, especially, you know, they've brought in plenty of freshman guys that are kind of viewed as defensive line, defensive end type tweener positions. But I think Verse really profiles as that edge position, drop down to D end or play outside linebacker, depending on what scheme you're really putting out there. But, you know, part of what you talked about, his inside pass rush ability, is what I love most. He really is able to shoot gaps extremely well, get between the guard and the tackle, get between the tight end and the tackle, and really get into the backfield. And that is tremendous. You know, something going against the FBS level that could be of concern is just how he's going to do as a run defender. And I think that's just always something that transition phase from high school to college, or from a lower level to a higher level, that's always going to be tough. But I think he has the strength and just pure ability to win one-on-ones to really succeed for the Texas Longhorns if he does decide to show up here.
Yeah, I think now the $1 million question is, what does a Texas offer mean to Verse? We are, I expect that we'll have a phone number for Verse in the next 24 hours. So we'll end up having an update from him at some point. And looking at, you know, he's already a guy that you and I have been paying attention to. So Florida State and Tennessee have been at the forefront. I believe he's taken official visits to both schools. I know Iowa is involved. So he's taken a couple of visits. I think he's a guy that wants to make a decision in early January. It'll be interesting to see if Texas, offering a little bit late on the spectrum, right? I mean, Florida State and Tennessee, as an example, have been recruiting this kid for weeks, which is better than days. If all things are being equal, they have a little bit of a head start here. Texas, I think, would have to kind of bring him in as quickly as they could. You know, will he make a decision before he can get into Texas for a visit? Would he be willing to come in for an unofficial visit? Would he fly? You know what I mean? And does Texas still have enough juice that if he's looking at Tennessee and Florida State and Iowa, does a Texas offer change things dramatically in a way where he'll move some things around to accommodate making sure he checks out Texas? All we know at this point is that he's been offered. It remains to be seen exactly how much further the Longhorns can get. But, you know, I think if you see Texas get a visit, if you see him trying to do something with Texas before he makes his decision, that's a great sign. Anything less than that, and there may be too much ground to make up.
Yeah, you mentioned some of these other schools that are in, and I think another big thing is just the ability to appeal to the transfer portal options. You know, you look at Florida State, Jermaine Johnson was a guy that was playing in a rotational role for Georgia, and he stepped in and was really one of the premier pass rushers of college football this past season. You mentioned Penn State potentially getting involved. Arnold Ebiketie is someone that is probably going to go day 2 now in this draft, coming from Temple. If you have those proven transfer success stories, then more and more transfers, I think, will be appealed to kind of come to your program. And I think that's something that Texas can really capitalize on with getting a guy like Verse. If they can find him really succeeding in his role, then they could easily kind of create a domino effect of further transfer options, looking at Texas as, hey, you know, I've seen other guys step in right away and contribute. That could be me very easily.
Florida State feels like the team to watch here. They've been so proactive in the portal. To hear that they were one of the first schools to offer, got him in for an official visit before the second week of, you know what I mean? Like they're kind of like Texas. They've got the juice of being a real power from the past that's trying to regain some glory. They just have, I think, an edge with the portal that schools like Texas have been a little bit behind with. It didn't lead to anything on the field this year for Florida State, but you know, if I see Florida State or Michigan State's name next to a kid that's visiting, I think to myself, okay, those staffs have done a great job of mining the portal. We need to look at that name. That's a guy we need to just look at and figure out what's going on there, because they've done, as far as I can tell, as good a job as anybody else of both stressing the portal, but also having success with it. As good as Michigan State was this year, I think I saw the stat, you know, we were talking about it in Slack, actually. The second time I've mentioned it, our inter-staff conversations at Orange Bloods here in this video. But Jason Sukamel and I were arguing about the effectiveness with the portal, because I think 7 of Florida State's best 8 players were from the portal this year, including a pass rusher that they had picked up that ended up probably being the best player on their defense, but they still had a losing year. So his whole response was, well, how good could they have been if the 7 or 8 of their best players are from the portal and they go 5-7 or whatever it was? And it was like, no, Jason, imagine that team without the guys from the portal. Now you're potentially talking about a 2-10 or 3-9 type of team, and an absolute disaster. Anyway, I'm rambling now. Everybody just needs to watch Florida State is what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually about to make that point. Michigan State gets all the credit for being the transfer portal school because they had all the immediate success following the use of the transfer portal, but Florida State is just as involved. Obviously, each program is going to have their own ideology in terms of addressing the portal. Texas is very obviously heavy on the high school recruiting front, but you know, if you can get guys in this portal that are going to be long-term contributors, like a guy like Verse who has 3 years of eligibility, then there's really no downside to it, especially when they seem to have the talent and promise that Verse does, especially with all the FBS attention that he's been getting.
All right, well, there's your crash course on Jared Verse. Do us a solid, like the video, because we did this as like an emergency type thing. It's not like it's manual labor or anything, but my man was like out getting ready to have a good time at somebody's birthday. And I like put the bat signal up because we want to do these videos when there's an opportunity to react to an offer. So, hey, don't do it for me. I know you guys think I'm a jerk. Like the video for the effort that Michael gave to get his butt here in time before he goes out and maybe gets a buzz from drinking wine and having a good time at a birthday event. Subscribe to the channel. Do all of those things that we ask you to normally do, but do it for Michael for being Johnny Hustle on the spot. We will do this again soon. Anwar and I will have a video on Tuesday, but until next time, for myself and Michael Rochman, thanks for watching. We'll do it again later. Y'all be good.